security agencies.
We had a group of people seizing the opportunity to commit one form of crime or the other.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss 5 years of the Buhari administration focusing on the aviation sector.
As we continue our sectoral review of the 5 years of Buhari administration, one sector that also made some strides in the period under review is the aviation sector.
That's right, Juma. Aviation sector is one of the segments of the transportation sector that is significant to socio-economic development.
And this perhaps necessitated the current administration's focus on providing the enabling environment and infrastructure to enhance smooth operations in the sector.
Now, towards that objective, the federal government developed a roadmap to drive its plan to grow the sector for enhanced air travels in and out of the country.
And Kisley, some of the projects executed under the roadmap include provision of aviation infrastructure, such as the completion of terminal buildings in some airports in the country, remodeling of others, procurement of calibration aircraft, and equipment provision of light and instrument landing system, as well as rehabilitation of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport runway.
Well, little wonder then that some aviation experts expressed delight at the milestones achieved in the aviation sector in the last 5 years, especially in the execution of projects that are related to the safety and security of air travelers.
And, Kinsley, what is heartwarming is the ability of the current administration to complete inherited projects in addition to embarking on new ones that will facilitate air travels.
Well, one pertinent question to ask is to what extent have we gone now in terms of being a country in the implementation of the aviation roadmap, and what is the state of the nation's airports in terms of safety and security, and where are we in terms of seeking to float a national carrier all over again, and what is the situation with airports concessioning. It's a wet morning here in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, but it's Good Morning Nigeria, live as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Welcome to the program, and I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
Quite a wet and beautiful morning, actually, and I'm Juma. So thanks for joining us. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, and we are coming to you from the nation's capital, Abuja.
All right, in the course of the program, we have traditional complementary segments. Those will include newspaper review and others. But in the meantime, let's join Najatu Tijani for the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Najatu.
Good morning, Kingsley and Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. We are starting with the latest on the coronavirus infection. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has reported 315 new cases of COVID-19 around midnight of 8th June 2020. The breakdown of the figure shows that Lagos has 128 new cases, the FCT has 34, Rivers 32, Edo 28, Oyo 22, Kaduna 20, while Gombe has 13 new cases. Others are Ogun State with 8, Delta and Kwara 7 cases each. Plateau and Kano have 5 each, while Bauchi has 4 and Katsina State has 2 new cases. Nigeria currently records 12,801 cases of COVID-19, with 4,040 of them discharged, while 361 patients have died. And Nigeria is leveraging the COVID-19 pandemic to improve the nation's healthcare system and infrastructure. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force, Boss Mustafa, while reviewing the national response, said molecular laboratories have been increased from 2 to 30 within 100 days since the index case was confirmed on February 27th this year.
1,000 tests have been conducted in the country. Over 13,000 health workers have been trained, increasing the human resource available for case management. The number of beds available for isolation and case management has increased from 3,000 beds to about 5,000 beds nationwide.
Still on COVID-19, the Inspector General of Police, Muhammad Adamu, has unveiled operational guidelines and regulations for the Nigerian police and other law enforcement agencies at the force headquarters in Abuja. This is part of measures to foster a more harmonious working relationship between the police and citizens in the enforcement of COVID-19 guidelines.
We had issues of group of people seizing the opportunity to commit one form of crime or the other. This handbook is also addressing such situations when it arises under the COVID-19 pandemic situation.
Meanwhile, the federal government has described as reassuring the giant strides being recorded by the Nigerian military in the ongoing counterinsurgency operations. President Buhari stated this while granting audience to the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Yusuf Buratai, who for the first time disclosed the casualty figure on the side of the terrorists. He urged the military not to relent or be lenient to the criminal elements as efforts are being intensified towards making Boko Haram a thing of the past.
So far, over 1,429 of these Boko Haram terrorists have been neutralized, and we have arrested over 116 Boko Haram terrorist informants, their spies, their couriers on logistics, and their coordinators in the villages, in towns, and even in the forests. Our intelligence corps, along with the Department of State Services, and of course, our good friends, the civilian JTF, have worked very hard to see that this is achieved.
The House of Representatives Committee on Reformatory Institutions has expressed satisfaction with ongoing construction of the 3,000 capacity maximum custodial center in Abuja. The chairman of the committee, Anayo Edwin, gave the commendation after an oversight visit by committee members to the site in Karishi on the outskirts of the FCT.
We are happy with what is on ground to make sure that they release their funds as when due.
And we also thank the authorities of correctional services for awarding it to our indigenous contractors.
Meanwhile, the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs has screened 8 career ambassadors nominated by President Muhammadu Buhari to represent Nigeria in 8 African countries.
It saves time, it saves money, it's the new normal, and they are quite articulate nominees. And I thank the Committee on Foreign Affairs for this opportunity.
That's the morning news. The program continues with Jummai and Kingsley after the break.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. We have observed the lockdown. We have practiced the measures in order to curb the spread of the virus, but we can do better. The coronavirus spread is increasing daily, and only together can we cut down the numbers and defeat the spread of the virus. Remember, COVID-19 is not a death sentence, and a recovered patient cannot spread the disease. Do not stigmatize. Do not hesitate to report any case, or if you have come in contact with anybody that has been infected with COVID-19. If you have cough and fever, please stay at home and call your state hotline. Find state numbers at www.covid19.ncdc.gov.ng. Remember, it is for your own good and for the good of every Nigerian. Let us do better and defeat the virus. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Do you not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. The federal government has continued to roll out stimulus packages to revamp the economy as a result of COVID-19 impact. Kolo Muhammad reports.
The continued active productivity of industries ensure job protection, reduced inflation threshold, and decline anxiety over the possibilities of the economy going into recession. The federal government of Nigeria is working to ensure economic return in the post-COVID era even better than as it were. The monetary policy rate now stands at 12.50% from 13.50%, and 500 billion naira fiscal stimulus funding to industry operators has been made available. And the 3.4 trillion naira Central Bank of Nigeria and Bankers Committee towards revamping national economy. These, experts believe, will ensure sustainable employment of labor, boost industry production capacity, as increased production will in turn mitigate price movement, which will create conducive ecosystem in infrastructure and services provided in divergent sectors of the economy.
Take the example of Kakuri in Kaduna. It was a whole city that was built by the textile industry. It is not just the textile workers that contributed to the economy of Kakuri. As the industries were functioning, there were people who were producing food for the workers. There were people who were selling clothes to the workers. There were people who were buying products from these factories. So it was a whole chain of activity that was not just helping the workers working in those factories. It was helping the community, and it was helping the entire state of Kaduna. It's a complete goal of its own. But we believe that with the appropriate intervention and policies of government, we can recreate that.
Let's see where the week's opening day activity on the floor of the Nigerian stock market placed market indices. In gratitude of having you along on Business News, I am Kula Muhammad.
Many thanks, Kula Mohammed, for the business package. Next is newspaper review.
And our paper reviewer, Bayo Chilby, is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Juma. Good morning. Good morning.
The rains.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Right, Bayo, good to see you.
Yes.
Wet morning here today.
Wet today, and Abuja enjoys two levels of rains. There is the conventional rain, and because Abuja is surrounded by hills, you have the relief rain. That's why sometimes it comes all the drizzling all through.
That's right.
Okay. Well,
struggle to get out of bed this morning.
At least it's a respite from the heat. Let's begin now with the Punch newspaper. Just above the masthead, we have COVID-19 loans will be dispersed 48 hours after approval. That's coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. And you find that story on page 22. Taraba killings, outrage as Malami spares army mastermind orders soldiers trial. With Rider, police arraign notorious kidnapper Wadume orders. Military refuses to produce 10 policemen killers. Find that story on page 7. Doctors to begin nationwide strike next week. Story is on page 26. Below the masthead, we have the headlines there. 50% of Kano 979 strange deaths caused by coronavirus, says federal government. And with Rider, COVID-19 pandemic just beginning in Nigeria, declares PTF. Lawmakers in fear as 5 Gombe assemblymen test positive. You find the story on pages 2, 8, and 28. And the picture story there you're seeing, anti-rape protesters in Abeokuta, Ogun State, Lagos, and Ibadan on Monday. And you can see them protesting peacefully against the scourge, which were the rape scourge happening across the country all over the place. Ex-Lagos CP Sav buried in Benue, autumn mourns. You find that story on page 8. Kogi disputes NCDC treated state index case for COVID-19. That story is on page 10. We will wipe out bandits to protect our farms. It's coming from, attributed to Governor El Rufai. Find that story on page 16. Federal government declares Friday, June 12, Democracy Day holiday. That story is on page 29. Policewoman killed by robbers in Kogi buried. The story is on page 4. Nigerian returnees to pay for airfares accommodation. The FG is talking now on that. That's on page 2.
Okay, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper, Abia governor hands over to deputy, and Bazo is now in isolation. By the way, we discussed this yesterday. Details of that story can be found on page 6. And below the nameplate, Wadume and others arraigned for terrorism. Details on page 7. Buhari tips judge for PCA. PCA stands for President of the Court of Appeal. Details on page 7. Lead story says government worried about breach of rules by churches and mosques. And with saying 60% of 979 deaths in 8 Kano councils COVID-19 related. That's according to the government. Now we urge our religious leaders and the entire populace to adhere to the guidelines issued by the PTF and the protocols agreed by the state governments. The photograph there shows police officers from the intelligence response team leading Wadume and other suspects to the vehicle after appearing in court yesterday. Details, of course, are inside the paper, as we said, on page 7. Then you have a sidebar there also giving in numbers global cases of COVID-19 infections, 7.1 million. Total number of deaths, over 407,000. And nearly 3.5 million persons have recovered. In Nigeria, total number of cases now over 12,800, fatalities 361, Active cases, we have 8,400. So Nigeria is dealing with 8,400 active cases of coronavirus. And below that, you have a number of riders. Says Obasanjo warns of food crisis. 6 NDDC officials test positive. Nigeria seeks tourism Marshall Plan. Police and others to get guidelines. Our viral story by Ebonyi Esco. Burial without approval to attract 10 billion naira fine in Rivers. NCDC, Nigeria's 200,000 testing capacity underutilized. Details on pages 6 and 8 of the paper. And the second lead story, right there on the front page, says, no NEC meeting before Edo primary, says APC. That's on page 5. And two riders to that says, court. That's a ruling from the court. It says, maintain status quo. And PDP not keen on Obaseki and Akeredolu's deputy. And lastly, Buhari halts action on state legislature and judiciary financial autonomy. Page 8.
Well, let's start with the update read by Jummai. That in Kano State, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says there were 979 mysterious deaths recorded between April and May in Kano. And the committee is saying that between 50 to 60% of them, that is between 490 and 587, were as a result of COVID-19. The Minister of Health, who declared this during the daily briefing, said that many of them actually were above age 65 and they had pre-existing ailments. It was rare, 43 of the deaths, about 43 of the deaths per day during that period. And that has put that development behind us now. Meanwhile, the Kano State government has got its act together in conjunction with the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Facilities have been put in place and testing are ramping on. Yesterday marked the 100 days since February 27, where we first had our index case of COVID-19. And the PTF, in looking behind, has said that so far we have had about 80,000 tests. Bed space have increased from 3,000 to 5,000, and over 1,000 Nigerians have been evacuated. The coordinator of the Presidential Task Force indicated that there are 4,000 of our compatriots who are stranded abroad who are desirous of coming home. However, there are new protocols that they will have to observe. To come home now, they will have to be tested for COVID-19 before they board the flight. And that test must be valid before they board. If that test expires after 14 days, it means they will require a new test. And also, upon arriving, they will be responsible for their transportation and accommodation. They will be required to be in isolation, and they will have to volunteer to come out for testing within 72 hours upon arriving. There will be 2 entry points if they are to come into the country, that is Lagos and Abuja, and the arrangement for their stay will be effectively by them. Lagos yesterday shot back to its preeminent position. You recall that yesterday they were placed about the 4th. And we were hoping that perhaps they have reached the peak and we'll begin to see ascendance down. Unfortunately, Lagos yesterday recorded the highest. Yesterday's record was 315 across 14 states, and Lagos had the highest, which means that it is not yet Uhuru as far as COVID-19 is concerned. However, the chairman of the Presidential Task Force,